beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy.
And Paul.
Alright, this is one of my best friends, Paul, and today we're going to be doing a deck tech for you guys on Paul's, one of Paul's EDH decks, which is Karn Silver Golem. I always forget what the second part is. Yeah, so Paul, why'd you build this deck?
I wanted to build a colorless deck because it was fun, and there's the wonderful Planeswalker Ugin, which exiles all colored permanents, and it doesn't hit anything in my deck, which is fun.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. And basically, one reason that we really wanted to film this video for you guys is that with the recent edition of Ulamog that came out of Battle for Zendikar, I know a lot of people wanted to build EDH decks around them. One of our friends, Eddie, actually did that, and was kind of like, hey Paul, like, you know a lot of the lands that go in this deck since you can't run basic lands, so he was asking him about lands, so we wanted to try to talk a lot about that and what lands are in this deck, because they're colorless, because colors are... you can't run them. So,
no,
yeah.
no colors.
Yeah, no colors
Not
at
in
all.
abilities, nothing can have a color identity, which is awkward.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of the times.
It is, definitely. So talk about Karn.
So Karn is one of 4 legendary creatures now that you can have as a commander.
It's 4 or 5, yeah.
You have both Ulamogs, Karn the Silver Golem, Kozilek. Okay, there's 4. That's it.
Okay.
Because Emrakul's the last one, but he's banned for commander, so we can't do that.
Yeah, that would be really scary. I would not want to play against that.
So Karn has 2 abilities on him. If he blocks or becomes blocked, he becomes a 0/8, which is... you don't attack with him, but he makes a very good defender. And the second ability, which is the more important ability, is you can turn any artifact into a creature for 1 mana. Yeah. Or any non-creature artifact into a creature. In its power and toughness become its CMC. So if you put it on something like a Darksteel Forge, which is a 9-mana thing that say all artifacts you control indestructible, you now have an indestructible 9/9 creature until end of turn.
Pretty sweet. I like it. Seems good. Cool. So we're going to go through basically each of the cards. As always, this deck will be listed in the down bar, so if you want to follow along with us, you can totally do that. So deck runs 36 lands. The first land is, let me go up a little bit, is Arcane Lighthouse. This card's pretty interesting, I think. I think it's really good against, like, you know, decks that are like, hey, I want everything to have hexproof, and you're just like, no. I
mean, it's less help for you. It's more because EDH is a kind of somewhat competitive cooperative game, where you're helping other people so they don't kill you. If other people have really big, scary things that are hexproof, you can go, no, it's no longer hexproof, and somebody else can kill it. It helps with diplomacy, which is a lot of what Commander is sometimes. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Then we have a Blinkmoth Nexus, which if you follow Modern at all, this is actually used in Modern Affinity decks, which sometimes when Paul plays the deck, he'll be like, turn 1, Blinkmoth Nexus, Ornithopter, and I'm like, so Paul, you're playing Modern Affinity, right?
Yeah.
Which the deck feels like sometimes.
This has almost every Affinity staple in it. It doesn't run the Mox, because I believe those are banned. It doesn't run Arcbound Ravager, which is probably something I should put in here. Yeah, Ravager's really good. But it can only run one of every one of these lands, so it's a little awkward sometimes being only have one Blinkmoth creature on the field. Something
that I think is really good about Blinkmoth is the fact that it's a manland, which Paul and I were talking about how that's one thing that he really wants to do in this deck is have a lot of manlands, because if you don't have creatures out, your creatures can, you know, do things for you that are not just, you have just a useless land.
Yeah, it's great if you have manlands, because, oh, hey, look, it's turn 1 and 2, you don't have big creatures? Well, hey, now you have creatures. Late game, somebody field wipes, that destroys all creatures. You still have creatures on your turn, because they were lands. Exactly.
Also, a thing that's really important about Blinkmoth X is that it has flying. The deck doesn't really deal that well
with flying. No, there is one
all.
Flyer in the entire deck. There are a couple ways I can give things flying. There's Chroma's Memorial, which gives all my creatures flying, which is absolutely amazing and very necessary, really, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, basically. And people want to kill a Chroma's Memorial kind of as quickly as possible, so it is really threatening. There's a lot of evil things that people like to kill in the deck.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Then we have Buried Ruin. I really like this card.
It's fun. There's not a lot of good ways for colorless to get things back from the graveyard. Yeah. This deck is a third artifacts, basically. Actually, like 2/3 artifacts. Yeah. So I can get back 2/3 of my deck, which is really nice for 2 mana, or a card from 2/3 of that, which is really helpful at times. It's nice when someone goes to, like, kill something, and then you're like, cool, just bring it back. And again, the deck produces so much mana that you don't even care about sacrificing a land. I mean, early game, yeah, you kind of need it, but once you're past early, mid-game, you kind of don't care anymore. Yeah, basically. Cathedral of War. It's great early game, because you can drop it the same turn you drop an Ornithopter for turn 1. So you drop that Ornithopter Midnight, next turn you swing with either a 2/2 or a 1/3, and you paid 0 mana for that creature, so it's just great. Yeah, pretty good. I like it.
And then we have Cloud Post.
So this is another land that comes in tapped. There's a couple of these in the deck because you don't have a lot of options for colorless lands.
Yeah, basically.
But the nice thing about this one is you get 1 mana for every
locus
in play. There's only one other locus in the deck, which is Glimmer Post, I believe.
Yes.
Which gives you 1 life for every locus in play. I believe it is, or it's 1 locus for every locus you control.
Yes.
For each locus on the battlefield. So yes, it's 1 for everyone on the battlefield. Nobody else is really going to be running these, so you will only get maybe 2 mana for this, but it's 1 land that produces 2 mana, which is great in EDH.
Yeah, absolutely. Not by any means the best Magic card ever printed, but I mean, hey, it does the job, and, you know, yeah. Then we have, Crystal Vein. Is this card getting reprinted, actually? I might be making that up.
I don't think this is getting reprinted. Okay. But, again, it's land, produces colorless mana, which is always nice.
And you can stack it if you need to. And
mid-late game, you need that 1 extra mana to cast Ulamog, Kozilek, or any
big
Void Winnow, or any big scary thing. That 1 extra mana can save you 1 land drop, which can make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you produce a lot of mana. You don't really care about sacrificing it that much late game. Darksteel Citadel.
Artifact land.
This card's amazing.
That's all I need to say. It's an artifact land.
It's an artifact land. It's the fact that it counts as an artifact for so many of the different abilities that you do in this deck. It's amazing. So good.
If I could run 4 of those, I would.
You cannot. Then we have Dread Statuary. Just a man land.
Yeah, it's another man land. Yeah. 4 mana becomes a 4/2. It's an artifact creature when it becomes a land, which is, again, that helps. There are things in the deck that care for the number of artifacts you control and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly. Again, I think man lands are really, really important in this deck. Cool. And then we have Eldrazi Temple. Yeah.
Big, scary, colorless creatures. All Eldrazi. They're fun. Everybody hates them. But they're kind of fun, and this produces 2 mana when playing one of those. And this is any Eldrazi spell. There's only 2 Eldrazi spells in existence. There's Alda's Dust, and there's one other instant that's Eldrazi type. And I don't run that one.
I don't know what that one is.
It's a counter.
It's
counter target. It's 7 mana, counter target spell that's targeting a creature you control. If the creature control has power 7 or greater, you can pay 0 for it. But this is EDH, there's not a lot of target spells.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really do much for that.
Yeah, yeah.
But it makes all this dust cost 5 mana instead of 7, which is really good.
That's really cool. Eye of Ugin. This card's amazing. This card's so good.
This is the second ability on this. Yes, it makes Eldrazi cost 2 less to cast, which is fantastic. The more important thing is 7 mana, search for any colorless card, basically.
Yeah.
Any colorless creature card, which is super relevant. Yeah. Because 7 mana, next turn I drop basically anything I want from the deck.
It's really good, and like something I like about your deck a lot is that it's like you have so many options to do with your mana. So it's just like, oh, you're like, I have nothing to do with my mana. And the thing that's really awesome about this is because you're running so many weird lands that a lot of people don't see very often, it kind of throws people off. They're just like, oh, you just got a bunch of lands. And I'm like, no, they do things. It's like you have to really pay attention to what the lands do.
The one problem is land destruction in Path to Exiles because I can't get basic lands.
Yeah. I mean, Path is only really 1 card. And,
yeah, well, there's always Ghost Quarter, which is another card that should probably go into this deck. But it doesn't... It's not as good in EDH because it's... Yeah. But it would be nice to get rid of somebody's really scary lands sometimes. Yeah,
Ghost Quarter is really good. Cool. And then we have Foundry of the Councils. I really like this card. I think it's really cool. It's nothing super fancy, but again, it gets you some flying...
Yeah, it's...
Flying?
Yeah, it gives you 2 Thopters, which can be very useful and can buy you 2 turns to draw something super relevant when you don't really need the mana. Because there are some decks that run nothing but flyers, which is a very big problem for this deck.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it gives you something to do like late game when you have so much mana and you don't really know what to do with it. So you can just sack it and get some creatures. Cool. And then we have Gargoyle's Castle.
It's another land you sacrifice to get a creature, and it gives you another creature with flying. This one's a 3/4 with flying, and an artifact, which is fun because artifacts are relevant.
Yeah. Glimmer Post, we talked about this one a little bit earlier. Again, kind of just another...
Yeah, you get 2 life out of this, potentially. More often than not, you're just going to get the 1 life from playing it, unless you're playing against somebody else who happens to be running Locust Lands, which is not something you'll see unless they're also running a colorless deck, which is not a lot of people.
Basically, yeah. Then we have God's Eye.
This card's fun because there is another land you'll see later, which is Scorched Ruin. And this is if the land gets destroyed, for whatever reason, you get a creature out of it. And you get a 1/1 flying spirit, which is... actually, no, it doesn't have flying. It's just a spirit.
It's just a colorless spirit, yeah.
But hey, it's another 1/1.
Yeah, basically. Then we have Haunted Fengraf. This card's sweet.
It's return a card. It's a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. It is at random, but most of the times the creatures in your graveyard are all super relevant. So because they've all been killed by other people because they don't like your big scary things.
Exactly. Yeah. Then we have Haven of the Spirit Dragon.
This is here mostly to bring back Ugin so you can keep recasting Ugin. I know it says sacrifice. There are ways to get land back.
Yeah.
Because when you have an Eldrazi hit your graveyard, you shuffle your entire graveyard back into your library and you get the card back, which is fun. Because then you cast Ugin multiple times. Basically.
And then people don't like you. Then we have Homeward Path.
So I put this in the deck mostly because there was one game of Magic where everybody kept stealing my big giant artifacts and I got tired of it. So I put the deck in so I can get my creatures back. And it produces the colorless mana, so it's really useful for that. But it's people need to stop taking my creatures.
It's really good against Zedru as well.
Yes, because it gives them all their stuff back.
Yeah. One of our friends, Justin, has that. I don't know if he still has it together, where Zedru, you donate things, basically. So it's really good against that, because you're just like, nope, everyone gets all the things that they own. And it shuts down Zedru, basically, because that's something that they want to do. Then we have Inkmoth Nexus.
Flying Infect, Affinity. If you've seen any Affinity Modern deck, it's Manland. And it's great. And
it's got flying. It offers you kind of like another win condition if going through points of damage are impossible. You're like infect, basically. Yeah.
Getting that off on turn 1 and then swinging turn 2 with a land because you have nothing else to do turn 2.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of low mana cost stuff in the deck, unfortunately, because it's an artifact deck.
You just pretty much ramp to your big stuff. That's pretty much what you do in the game. Then we have Mishra's Factory.
Yeah, Mishra's Factory. Yeah. This is another manland. And it buffs assembly workers. There's another land that produces assembly workers, and I think there's another land that also becomes an assembly worker. So, hey, you play assembly workers, they get bigger. So it's fun.
It's really good, too, that it's 1 mana to make a 2/2.
Yes.
Like, that's just really, really good value right there. And again, if you don't need that, you just use it for the mana, which is super great. And very similarly,
or even on defense with it, because it's you don't have to tap it, obviously, to make it a creature. You declare it as a blocker, then you tap it to give it +1/+1, so you now have a 3/3 blocker.
Yeah, super sweet.
So if they try and buff it or something to kill it, you still have a slight chance to save it.
Yeah, and very similar to that is Mutavault, which is so amazing.
It's all your land types. It's Blinkmoth, it's an assembly worker, it's great.
Yeah.
You've got both of those lands, you get the Blinkmoth Nexus and Mishra's Factory on it, you just gave it +2/+2 potentially, which means you now have a 4/4.
Basically.
Which is really awesome.
Mutavault's super amazing. I mean, used in Modern Merfolk. Really awesome. Cool. Then we have Phyrexian's Core. I like this card.
If someone's going to go kill an artifact or kill a creature you control or something, you just go pay 1 and you can gain a life instead of it just going to waste, basically. Or they're going to path something, you sacrifice the creature instead, their path gets wasted, and you gain the life out of it.
Yeah.
It's more just utility.
Something that's super great about this, too, is with Hangerback Walker. You want to get a way to get rid of your Hangerback Walker, you can sack it, and you get all those flying
tokens. You got a really big Hangerback Walker? Yeah, that's a great way to get those flyers when you need them.
Super amazing. I like it. Then we have Radiant Fountain. Nothing super fancy, but still a really good card, gaining some life and stuff. Yep. You got a couple of lands that gain life, which I think is really cool. So, yeah, not a lot of other ways I think to gain life.
No, there's not a lot of good ways and colors to gain life.
Then we have a Reliquary Tower, which
maximum hand size, which is great. At the beginning of the game, for whatever reason, you got kind of stalled out and got nothing but big creatures in your hand, and you're just kind of stalling. Somebody else is playing things that make you draw. It just kind of saves you, and you're not sitting there like, I don't know what to do. And
there was one game, I don't remember what it is. I think it's the Staff of Domination that you have that you can draw cards with. Am I making that up? Yeah, so say you have that out and you have a ton of mana and you can draw a lot of cards and stuff. It's just really good. I know that one card that we talked about earlier today that you're going to be all over, the one that says that you have no maximum hand size, and for 2 mana you tap and get 1.
In the new Commander decks, there is a card coming out that is 1 to play, gives you no maximum... it's 2 to play? 2 to play, yep. Okay, 2 to play. It gives you no maximum hand size, and you can tap it for 1. It's an artifact. It's fairly good.
Super good. Definitely going in this deck when it comes out. Yep. Cool. And then we have Rogue's Passage. This card's amazing.
4 mana, so you make a giant Eldrazi unblockable, or you make something that has the swords equipped to it. Yes, I have all 5 swords in the deck. They're fun. Yeah. They're rude. People don't like it. Pro Colors is great.
We'll talk about the swords when we get there. But yeah, Rogue's Passage is super awesome. It's really cool. Anything that you have that's super threatening, it's just really awesome. And again, you produce so much mana in this deck that 4 mana is really not anything.
No, that's super easy to get.
Yeah. Then we have Scorched Ruin, which this card is really good in this deck. I like it a lot.
This is an interesting card. A lot of people don't like it because you have to sacrifice 2 untapped lands, so you can't...
You can't
use the mana from those lands first, but it produces 4 mana, so you sack a God's Eye, which gets you a creature. So you get a 1/1 creature from sacking that, and then you sack any other kind of non-utility land. There's a lot of them in the deck.
Yeah.
So like the Radiant Fountain or anything that did its thing, it's 1 turn, and then you don't really care about it anymore.
Basically. And you get 4 colors mana to your pool. That's like amazing.
That can cast a lot of the deck. It's really great. It ramps up real quick. It is annoying when somebody goes and Ghost Quarters your land as soon as after you Scorched Ruin, and so then you go from 3 lands to 0 lands.
Yeah, definitely, but it's a really good card. There's a lot of lands that you would want to sack for that reason, so I think it's really awesome. What's cool too about Ghost Quarter is that you can get rid of your own thing. Yes. Yeah, you wouldn't get the basic land out of it, but you can always Ghost Quarter your own stuff, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I can Ghost Quarter on my own Jedi if I need the 1/1.
Then we have Seraph Sanctuary. I mean, given there's no...
There used to be a Moonsilver Spear in the deck, which would get you angels whenever a quick creature attacks, so I could get a little gain life out of that. But from playing the deck, it didn't really end up being relevant very often, and so I'd either have the Moonsilver Spear and not have the land, or have the land and not have the Moonsilver Spear.
Yeah,
and
it's just too situational.
Or the artifact would just get killed very quickly because they're like, no, we're not letting you produce flying angels, which was super helpful because I need the flying blocks, but...
There's better things.
Yeah.
There's so much better things. The thing about Seraph Sanctuary is probably something that will potentially come out when there are better lands that get made, but in the now it's kind of a place filler in the deck. Then we have Shrine of the Forsaken Gods.
It's a land that can produce 2 mana if you have... So mid-late game, this is great. There's not a lot of ways to mana land ramp with the deck, so it's going to not be really all that great turn 7 when you have 7 lands on the field, potentially later.
It's like Temple of the False God, basically.
It's a slightly more useful Temple of the False God, because you can use this early, where Temple of the False False God you can't use until late game.
Well, this one is 7 or more lands, and Temple's 5.
But Temple doesn't produce 1 mana if you don't have less lands.
Oh, yeah, okay, good
So this is a little bit more versatile.
Yeah, I like them both.
But they're both great lands.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool. Then we have Stalking Stones.
It's another man land. 3/3. Elemental artifact, which is a weird combination.
Yeah.
I don't know of any other elemental artifacts.
Not super amazing. I mean, given it's 6 mana to make a 3/3, but you produce so much mana in this deck, I don't really think you care that much. If not, it just produces you mana. Speaking of Temple of the False God, Temple of the False God's in here. Super amazing EDH staple.
Yep, it's great. You will hit 5 lands every single game. If you don't, something went really wrong, and you're probably dead already.
Basically.
Thespian Stage. 1 mana, produce a land. More important thing, 2 mana. And it becomes a copy of any land on the battlefield. Not necessarily you control any land on the battlefield. So you got a Scorched Ruin, and hey, guess what? You got 8 mana from 2 cards.
Yeah.
Which is super, super awesome.
Thespian Stage is really versatile. I really like it.
And
really
also,
cool.
if you need, say, another indestructible land that's an artifact, you can make it a copy of a Darksteel Citadel. There's one card you don't ever want to make it a copy of, which is always run in Commander decks. Command Tower, because you can't produce mana from it.
Yeah, don't do that. That's bad.
Commander has no color identity.
What not to do in this deck? That. Cool. Then we have Tomb of the Spirit Dragon.
This is probably the best way in the deck to gain life, because you have a giant field of colorless creatures sometimes. And
you can make them creatures with Karn.
You can make all the artifacts creatures with Karn. I typically don't end up playing Karn much because it's just I need to do other things with all that mana I produce.
Yeah.
And he's just not always the most useful thing to have on the field because he's basically just a blocker most of the time. Because if you swing, they'll block with a 1/1 and nothing happens. So he's just he's a much better defender than attacker.
I agree. Yeah, a 0/8. Not a lot of people can really deal with that. So
nope.
Yeah, I like that. Cool. Then we have Urza's Factory.
This is the land I mentioned earlier, which produces assembly worker tokens.
Yes.
It costs 7 to make them, but it's very hard to destroy lands. So you have mana, you don't have creatures in your hand, don't have a lot of things to do, go make some creatures.
Yeah. I like it, and I think this is something that a lot of times you can like dump your hand in this deck. You've got nothing else to do with your mana, and you can keep making the assembly worker tokens, which is really, really awesome. And again, a lot of times people won't pay attention to your lands, so you're just like, I'm gonna make an assembly worker token and block, and it's just really good.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we run the Urza lands that are used in Tron. Yep. So there's Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Tower.
Yep, all three. I'd never actually gotten all three in the battlefield at the same time because, you know, there's 35 other lands. Yeah. So basically, getting all three of them is difficult.
But, I mean, at the same time, if you do get them, that's really cool. Great, yeah. There's not really a reason not to run them.
Nope.
They're just really good.
They still produce mana on their own, so yeah.
Basically. And then, this is my favorite morph in existence, and that is Zoetic Cavern.
It's a land that morphs. It is the only legal morph you can run in the deck, because it is the only colorless morph. Or fully colorless morph, I should say. Yes. Because technically all morphs are colorless.
Yes.
But they flip into creatures with color, which you cannot run then, so...
My favorite thing that Paul does is, like, he'll play this as a morph, and we're like, we know what it is, Paul. Like, we know it's a land. But I think it's super sweet about this, because the fact that you have a 2/2, so if you don't need mana, you've got a 2/2 blocker or 2/2 attacker.
As she said, you gotta... If you don't need the mana, you have a 2/2 creature, which is always relevant. And if somebody goes to swing at it or kill it, you flip it, and it's now a land, or you can use it to play 2 lands in a turn.
Yeah, basically. Super great. I like it.